Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Chad and Chong podcast. We are so excited today. We have a drummer, producer, arranger, and playback engineer for some of the biggest artists today. We're talking about Sabrina Carpenter, Camila Cabello, Tinashe, Becky G, Maluma, Ava Max, and so many more amazing artists. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome TJ Rodriguez.
Thanks for having me.
TJ, thanks so much for being on the Chad and Chong podcast. You've accomplished quite a lot in this industry, but where did it all start? Like, who is TJ? Where is he from? How did he get in this music industry?
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town in Georgia. It's like 2 hours south of Atlanta. It's called Dublin. I recently looked up the population of the town, and I think it was like 16,000 people. It's a really small town, and I live in Santa Clarita now, so I think the population of Santa Clarita is like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So Dublin is literally a fifth of where I live now. So really small public school. You know, I grew up in church. My parents split. I originally was born in Florida, outside of Orlando, but moved when I was 6 to Dublin, which is where my mom's from. So basically, you know, we moved there, and I grew up in church. My mom, thought church was really important for me, just for everything that we were going through. You know, stuff with my parents was really rough. So she took us to church, and it was great for me to grow up in that environment. From the time I was probably like 5th grade until I graduated high school, I was in school band and did that whole thing. I played in youth group, and like when I got into high school, the church let me play drums in the main sanctuary, and it's a really Southern Baptist church. So like we had a pianist and an organ player, and then they just let me hit some drums, like on hymns or whatever. They're like, turn your hymn to this page or whatever. And those were the kind of songs I was playing, but it was cool. Like that's kind of where I started in the music thing. I had a best friend growing up in middle school, and we would play like classic rock songs together really poorly, but we just loved to do it. But all that to say, like from an early age, I surrounded myself with other musicians, whether it was school band, like marching halftime shows, or whether it was in the youth band or like in church or like with my friends. Like I always wanted to surround myself with music with my friends in some capacity. And that was my whole life growing up. Like I would get distracted in school. I would just think about music all the time. It was just music was on my brain at all, like always. And I graduated high school in 2014, and like that fall after I graduated, I moved to Atlanta, which was like 2 hours away from where I grew up. And I was like, I'm just gonna pursue music. Like I was like, that's the next best place I could think to go for now. And some great things happened. I met some great people, and we can get more into that, like how I got started and some things. But music was a part of my life since I was a child. I mean, I started playing drums when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
Like before I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned church and growing up kind of, with all the tech and everything. And, churches have all the latest and greatest gear, playback, all this kind of stuff. How do you think, growing up in a more stripped down technology wise, shaped maybe like your musicality and, things to look out for?
Well, I mean, honestly, it started out, for me, it made me learn how to really make the most of what we have, to make an impact with not a lot of material. It's like, now we're used to like an entire band has backing tracks and everything's to time code, and we have lights and visuals, and everything's perfectly planned, and it's like powerful, boom and PA. But when I was growing up, it was like we had a guy who was a volunteer sound guy who like didn't really know what he was doing. Like just like some people who volunteered to play piano and organ and maybe a guitar, and we just like did it for the love of it. You know what I mean? And it kind of just trained me to be able to operate in environments where we don't have all of the luxuries, but I can still thrive and I can still make an impact.
That's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say that's the biggest takeaway for me. And I did that for so long that it was cool to have those luxuries, like all of the new technology and resources, but learning how to make an impact, and to do my job as well as I can with not a lot of resources, like that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I think everybody should learn how to do that at some point, you know?
Yeah. You mentioned making the move to Atlanta and saying to yourself, I'm going to pursue this music thing. Was there like a pivotal moment that aided you in that decision, or like what made you say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I think it happened a few times. I think just God showing me in a few different ways, like you're on the right path. But I think where it really started for me was it was the summer after I finished 8th grade. I had a tough relationship with my dad, and it kind of turned into like I haven't seen him in a long time. You know, it was tough, but God that summer brought me to a church camp, a random youth camp, that summer of my 8th grade year, and I actually met the worship band that was leading worship for the camp was this band called Unhindered. I don't know if you guys have ever heard. I mean, they're really small, but one of the worship leaders of that band was Pat Barrett, who I love, and he's a great worship leader, songwriter in this kind of CCM world. But this was years ago, and it's funny, I didn't realize, like, in hindsight, meeting him ended up like opening so many more doors as I got older. Like I met him when I was in 8th grade going into high school, and he was super nice, him and the rest of the band, and like just watching them do their thing on stage, it was like, oh dude, that is so tight. Like that's what I want to do, And then fast forward, I moved to Atlanta out of high school, and I end up just going to the church that Pat's the worship leader at. And he remembers me, and he's like, "Oh, dude, like it's so good to see you again, man. Like, how you been?" Like he remembered my story about what happened with my dad and everything. Like he just, he was such a genuine guy, and he ended up like putting me on the worship team, and I got to play with him, and that kind of turned into like doing some travel stuff with him later down the line. I met a lot of the people who formed this worship group called Housefires that was based out of the church that I was at. And then some of those people who formed Housefires, they formed this group, Maverick City Music, and that turned into like recording on some albums for Maverick. So it's just kind of cool, like all the way back in 8th grade, like God took that little moment, and he crafted an amazing little story, and just opened up all these little doors for me to pursue, what was on my heart, and that was to do music and serve God. And now it looks different. It's, I'm not as involved in like the worship industry, but I still try to keep God in the center of my life. And I've met some amazing people along the way, and I've worked with some great artists. So it's funny, man, just from that little moment, just, now we're 15 years later, and I'm here in LA, and I'm
LA, that's right,
working for pop artists. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. You played on Promises, which is one of their, I think up to date, one of their biggest songs that
I think so. I mean, it definitely did really well when it came out. I think it came out like during COVID. I think it still does really well. Obviously they have so many other great songs now, but it's cool to see, go back every now and then, like on the YouTube video, and like see the comments, and definitely has like a lot of views, which is cool. It impacted a lot of people. That was a lot of fun, man.
So how did all that lead you into your move from Atlanta to Los Angeles? How did that happen?
Dude, so funny story. My current roommate, who I live with now, Edwin Carranza, an amazing musical director and bass player in the industry who, you guys know. I met him like during the start of COVID, when everything was shut down. We were playing Call of Duty together.
Wait, but how'd you guys get connected on Call of Duty?
Through Derek Cobbs. So I had a couple years prior, I had reached out to Derek on Instagram because I was a really big fan of what he was doing, and I loved the idea of kind of like arranging live shows and producing and stuff like that. And I saw that he was with Charlie at the time, Charlie Puth, and he was doing some really cool stuff. And I reached out to him on Instagram, and he was nice enough to respond, and we kept in touch. And I met him at a show in Atlanta that they did, and we like went and kicked it afterwards. And he was super cool, and kept in touch with him. And then fast forward, COVID, it's like he's playing Call of Duty, and it's like, oh, we should play together sometime. So we played, and he was like, oh, my buddy Edwin's gonna jump in with us. So Edwin jumped in, and we're all three in a game together. We're like vibing, playing Call of Duty, probably getting murdered. Yeah, it turned like Derek ended up going to bed, and then it was like me and Edwin had some kind of mission we were trying to do, and then like we didn't know who each other. I didn't know who Edwin was. He didn't know who I was, but we like really vibed with each other, and got to talking, and we played for months and didn't really ever disclose any. It was just like we were friends online, friends of Derek's, and then it just kind of turned into like Edwin was going through some stuff at the time, and he was looking for some new outlets of work. Like he really wanted to kind of get back to his roots, like in the church thing a little bit. And I was on the other end. I kind of wanted to get kind of out of the church stuff so much and get more into like the pop stuff. So, I saw that he was doing a lot of, he was with Camila and Jessie J and all of these amazing people. And, at the time they had just released Promises, like that album or whatever with Maverick. So, it was cool. I mean, before I moved to LA, like I was able to get him on a project or two in Atlanta, like just some church stuff. And he was gracious enough to do it on like low budget, but we've talked about it, and he's like, dude, that's stuff I really needed to do, like for healing for me. And and he was kind enough to like let me come out to LA and stay in his house for like a week and just meet people, and he would introduce me to his friends, and I met people that I was like, dude, I've been watching you on YouTube for years. You know what I mean? It's like, and now we're just kicking it. So he basically like we grew as friends, and he basically was like, dude, you should just come move into my house in LA. Like I'll give you a good deal on rent. Like I'm not going to charge you crazy money. And I was like, dang, what a blessing from God. So moved in with him, and that was January of 2021. And since then, I've been there ever since, and he's put me on a lot of work. He mentored me, like doing the playback stuff. He helps me to, get me to do some arrangements for him, for artists and stuff like that. So it's been a cool working relationship, but also a great friendship. Like we just, he's one of the bros for life. So huge blessing. But yeah, that's how it started, Call of Duty, basically. Yeah, pretty weird.
So Edwin basically adopted you through Call of Duty.
Basically, yeah.
We hear this a lot from a lot of the top musicians about touring and whatnot. Usually you're on stage for, maybe an hour, maybe 2.5 hours, but there's 22 hours of traveling and being in super close quarters, and you've toured a lot now. Can you talk about the importance of, being a cool hang and what that means, and like your interactions with the other people, and just maybe these skills for those of you who are like trying to get into touring, where yes, you work on your craft and yes, it's important, but there's also the more human aspect of it. And can you just share kind of your experience and your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to be really good at what you do, but I also know that, like you said, you're on stage for an hour, 90 minutes. Your craft, no matter how good you are, is only a percentage of the job. I mean, you do have to remember that you are going to be surrounded in close quarters with people. So it's important to be respectful, to be on time. It's important to like try to gel with personalities that maybe you don't normally gel with. I mean, it takes a lot of, self-reflection and figuring out like, okay, who do I want people to remember me as? I think I try to do a lot of things in a place of being rather than doing. I don't want to be remembered for like how good of something I did. I want to remember for like how I made people feel and who I was. So I think it's important to do some inner reflection and figure out like you're not always going to be around people who you necessarily vibe with all the time. You're going to, there are people in the industry that it's going to be like, dude, I really don't vibe with this guy. But it's like, man, everybody's going through something. What can you do to just, be a light to somebody? And I think that goes a way longer way than just like how good you do your job for 90 minutes a day, you know. I like to think that I make an impact way more off the stage than I do like sitting behind a couple computers and hitting play and doing some, you know what I mean? I think that stuff's important, and to just not have a big ego about it. Like there are a lot of people who are really good at what they do. There are way better playback engineers than me, but it took me a long time to figure out what it was that like why people wanted me on the job, you know. And I think it goes back to that off stage stuff, you know. Like I've practiced my craft. I like to think I'm pretty good, you know, but I also just try to operate in a place of like being relatable and just being someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
You know?
When do you find like you can speak into a situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely takes some discernment, like kind of some read the room kind of
Yeah,
vibes, you know.
yeah.
Especially in situations where you're working with, you know, on the top levels of artists. But you know, in in a lot of my cases, like most of my jobs are with Edwin, and he really trusts me, and I've learned basically like when to keep my mouth shut and when I can speak up.
Yeah.
Because when I first met him, and we joke about this, I can be very opinionated. So like I could just give my opinion when like no one asked for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like now, you know, 4 years later, it's like, oh yeah, no one's asking me for my opinion, so I'll just unless it's like we're in a situation where it's like we're really trying to navigate this, and if I think I have a good idea, I'll even like I won't just speak it up, but I'll maybe pull Edward aside or something and be like, "Yo, I have a good idea. Do you mind if I share?" And he'll be like, "Yeah, go for it," or whatever, you know.
Gotcha.
It's more so like, you know, being aware of the environment. It's definitely important to like have a really good working relationship with your MD, like somebody who you trust and who really trusts you.
Yeah.
Because you know, I'd like to think Edwin, uh, like if I needed to speak up and say something, which I have, like most of the time, he's like, "That was a good call," you know, like that was a good idea.
Yeah.
But I've had to learn when those times are.
Sure.
Because early on, I would have just been like, when every chance I get, I'm trying to prove myself, and it's like, oh, every idea I spit out is good. When it in reality, it's like no one's really asking my idea, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough, but I think having a good working relationship with, you know, an MD who you're working with, and you know, definitely maybe don't do it on your first day on the job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like trying to prove yourself. Yeah.
So let's pivot now to kind of a little bit more of a technical thing. A playback engineer. Describe for those who don't know what a playback engineer is, and maybe even like the preparation leading up to the show, and just all the responsibilities that fall under the playback engineer.
I will say a playback engineer feels like 13 people standing on your shoulders at all times. It's tough work, but it's really rewarding. So I mean, basically, the easy answer would be the playback engineer is the person that hosts all of the backing tracks for the show. So anything that a musician isn't playing on stage, there's basically a tracks rig off stage that's hosting all of the multi-tracks or stems that are from the album, or added stems from the arranger, or like, you know, an MD or something. Background vocals, all that kind of stuff, clicks and cues for the band. But it also is it's also the person that runs all of the time code, which time code is basically it's a signal that like lighting consoles and camera feeds will take to basically sync up everything they've programmed to music. So when I hit play on a song, this time code file, everybody's department is receiving this time code file, and that's when like their lights or visuals or whatever know when to start and where it is in the timeline of the song. So basically, if I don't hit play, the lights don't go. I mean, they can if they did it manually, but it's, you know, the show is basically fully dependent on whether or not my playback rig is solid. You know, it's a lot of pressure, and then, you know, you're the person that's in charge of file management of all stems, all the arrangements, original album stems, like added stems from programming and arrangements, or rehearsal recordings. Like a lot of times, like when I was on Sabrina Carpenter last year, we did a lot of rehearsal recordings where we would multi-track the band into my playback computer, so that like we would have full band, like live band demos and references of all the songs that I could just upload to Dropbox and send to whoever needed it, you know. So you're doing that kind of stuff, like rehearsal recording. You're mixing stems. You're leveling the entire show. You're making sure that one song's not louder than the other. You know, you're doing whatever edit requests are requested from any person, whether it's the MD, the artist, management, whatever, just whatever it is. It could be light edits, or it could be like it's going to take you 3 hours. Let's take a long lunch break, and you have to stay back and make some crazy edits, you know. But then during the show, you kind of have the easiest job. You hit play, and then you just kind of make sure your rig doesn't fall apart, or that no one spills coffee on it. You know. But it's a great job. It definitely takes, you know, tough skin. It can be really taxing and really draining at times. Long hours, but it's a good feeling, especially when the right people that you're working with like really appreciate what you do and understand your value to the show. It's really rewarding. It's like, you know, I can get to the end of a tour or a show and be like, yeah, we just did that. Like, I just did that. You know, it's like such a rewarding feeling. And then it's like all of the sleepless nights and long nights and all that. Yeah, it's just like, it was worth it, man. Yeah. You know, the artist is happy, like the band's happy, I'm happy. It turned out great. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of responsibility that falls on the playback engineer. I know maybe for a lot of church musicians, it kind of falls on drummers sometimes, and you just click 1, 2, 3, and 4. But there was somebody who had to create all that, all the arrangements, and you know, the playback engineer works with the MD, the music director, in tandem a lot. But since we are in the middle of Coachella weekend, weekend 1 just finished, and I know you've been on the Coachella stage. You know, TJ mentioned time code and all that, and you see the massive LED wall there and the lighting and everything, and literally the playback engineer is in charge of all that firing off at the right time.
Yep.
And so if he doesn't hit play or next, if he jumps before the MD or something, all that is thrown off. Since we are again in Coachella, can you maybe share a little experience of how it is and the pressure, and how do you deal with that, or how fun is it, rewarding, like you said, Coachella, which if you guys don't know is one of the most, you know, it's one of the biggest festivals in the world, and it happens in the desert here in California over 2 weekends. And TJ's been at Coachella.
Yeah, I did Coachella last year with Sabrina Carpenter. You know, we did the main stage, which was a huge blessing, so much fun. I mean, I remember hitting the stage. It didn't even feel. It felt like a rehearsal. Like I mean, there were so many moving parts. I mean, we were in production rehearsals for like 3 weeks or something with full set design, and just so many moving parts. And at the time, you know, I was helping Edwin prep 2 other Coachella shows at the same time. So my brain wasn't even fully in the one place. It was like I'd be making this one edit, and my brain's in like 2 other places. Wow. You know, on the day of the show, like with Sabrina, for example, I mean, I'm literally sitting there like I'm praying, like right before the show. I'm like, God, I want you to just grab my wrist, and I want you to press these buttons.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, Jesus, take the wheel, please. Carrie, I need you to come through right now. But dude, it's, you know, it's one of those things, like you press play at the top of the show, and it's like, okay, all right, we're going. You know, my rig's not on fire right now. We're good. And it's honestly like, you know, there were some things where it's like, oh, this moment just got really hectic, but it's like, as a playback guy, I am like, my senses are just as high as they could go. I'm like, I had cues where it was like, I had to watch somebody knock on a door, and like I had to press a door knocking button like right when they would do it, and I didn't have the best view. So it's like, it's little things like that. It's like, if I don't get that right, it looks really dumb. Somebody's like, click, click. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, I just, you know, it, like I said, it takes tough skin, and you have to really like hone in and like just be the most aware person in the room sometimes even more than the MD, because MD's worrying about other things. He's worried about the artist and the band. I'm worried about like the entire show happening and making sure that like no one is thrown off by what I'm doing, you know? But our set ended like, you know, for the most part, it went really well. We got off stage and like everybody was super hyped, and, you know, I hit all my cues. You know, it's different because, you know, I did the like heavy tracks church thing for a long time, playing drums, and like somebody set up the session and I'm hitting play. And I used to think that stuff was like super cool, which it is. But now that I'm on this end of like what tracks and stuff is, it's like, dude, it's a whole other ball game. It is an entire rabbit hole, bro. I mean, it's a lot. It's it's a lot of pressure. Because I'm also in charge of like sending MIDI to the guitar player's pedal board. So like his patch changes are based on like
That's crazy.
my Ableton session.
Wow.
So if my thing skips or somebody decides to drop a liquid, what's the name of that water that everybody liquid death all over my rig, then it's like there's gonna be so many things that fall apart, and people are gonna have to panic and like start doing stuff manually. But it's like, man, that's why it's important to make sure that you are the most aware as to what's going on. That makes it sound like Playback is awful, which is it's not. It's a great job. It's just like, I would say to people who like want to get into it, just prepare yourself. Like, it's a tough job, but it's really rewarding. And you gain so many skills. Especially if you're a musician, it makes it a lot easier because you can go into it not thinking about it so technically, but like how can you make decisions, like musical decisions, like think creatively when editing stems and stuff like that. It's not always A plus B equals C. It's not black and white. Like, there's a level of creativity to it and nuance, that I think every single person who would approach the job has something different they could bring to it, which I think is cool.
So maybe a lot of people don't realize what goes into like a TV performance, say it's an award show or something on Saturday Night Live. Can you maybe share a little bit about, maybe are there some differences from a live show or, something that's taped or filmed or something that's on live TV? Like, share some experiences on that.
Yeah. I'll tell you a few. It's TV is definitely way different than live because obviously, live there's structure, but it's not as it's not being broadcasted to millions of people, and there's not so many people behind the scenes involved that like have hundreds and hundreds of jobs like trying to make one broadcast happen at the same time. I would say with TV, like Sabrina did SNL, and that's live. So obviously, we did a few rehearsals, like they do like a dress rehearsal, and we run the songs. But it's so like those guys, especially like at SNL, those guys are so like to the minute. And it's like you have to be on your mark. Like, it's like, how long is the song? 2 minutes, 9 seconds, and how many milliseconds? Okay, that's how long it needs. Like, it's gonna be that way every time. I mean, it's really like we're really just on the books the entire time. Like, the edits have to be precise. We have to like make things like tracks can't be like past a certain amount of like loudness. You know what I mean? Like, we have to basically master things to a certain degree. And it's a wild experience. Same thing with like Fallon. Fallon's a little different because that's a taping and they show it later. So obviously there's a little bit more you can like, it's a little more lenient, but it's still in the same way that like you're working with directors, people who, it's like, I am listening to the MD, but I'm also just listening to some guy next to me who's like, okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah.
And it's like, this entire broadcast is, based on me like, what? Yeah. Is it time? Okay, go. You know what I mean? It's weird, but I've done it enough times now. That sounds super egotistic. Yeah, I've been on TV 100 times. No, but I would say TV, all that to say TV is a lot different than live show, but it's a different workhorse, man. Like, those guys that do TV, like just on the technical side, those are some of the sharpest dudes I've ever met in my life, and they even live their lives to a routine because it's like that's how they have to work. You know what I mean? So it's really inspiring to see, but it's I would say it's cool when I do it. But it's also like I don't know if I could see myself like working at that environment all the time. But it's cool to see like work with the artists and see them like promoting their stuff and kind of how, especially somebody like Sabrina who's an actor, like she does so good on camera. It's so cool to see somebody like her just like naturally like be on camera, and she just turns on this like, I know how to work on TV. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely same like similar to live shows, high pressure, just in a different way. Like, you just millions and millions of people are watching, and if anything goes wrong, it's gonna be like, cool, I'm gonna go sit in a closet by myself for 20 years. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Sabrina Carpenter is arguably one of the biggest pop stars in the world right now, and her schedule is extremely crazy. I mean, from doing her own headlining tour, world tour, to festivals, to TV shows, and all that. And you're right there with them. Can you share with our audience like what life on the road really is like when it's that busy? Like, are you even able to find some time for yourself? What happens when you get sick? Like all these kinds of things, like such an intense schedule.
Dude,
what is that like?
I have been sick on the road, and it sucks, bro. Especially in my position, because it's like there's no one else that really can do what I'm doing. So it's like I just kind of have to like take 8 Tylenols and hope that I feel better. But no, I mean, life on the road, I mean, it's really just important to find a routine, which is tough in a job that has no routine, but you just kind of have to find time to get outside and make sure to talk to family. And I would say as a playback guy, a lot of what I do off the stage is still, there's several artists who we're constantly making new arrangements for stuff. Like if something's coming up, like for example, like we could be on the tour and then we have to go fly and do a TV show the next day. So it's like we're doing the show, I'm off stage, like me and Edwin or whoever, we're making edits for the next day. Or I'm like prepping at another like an acoustic set or something, so we got to make like some sort of different arrangement. I got to send stems off to somebody to like record some acoustic guitars or something. Just there's just always like when you're off stage, like as a playback guy, your job kind of doesn't stop. What can be really tough is if you're on the road where your MD is working remote, and let's say you're on the other side of the world and you have to make edits, like either somebody's gonna have to bite the bullet and stay up all night, or like if it's 10 a.m. in LA and I'm in London, it's middle of the night, like, and we have to make edits, like somebody's gonna have to kind of bite the bullet and stay up super late, even if you have a show the next day. So it's important to find like pockets in the day where it's like try to get some rest, because it may not always look like sleeping 8 hours every night, especially if you're on a bus or doing a van thing with like bad hotel rooms. It's important to like get a routine, like try to either work out or like go on some walks, like just like 15-20 minutes a day, like get some sun, pray, meditate, because the work is going to keep happening. Obviously, I think in some scenarios, like some artists are more demanding than others. There will be, I mean, there's definitely some artists that I work for that they'll rock the same show for 7 months, and it's like they don't touch it, and it's like you just kind of show up and you hit play, and it's like cool. Then there are other artists who it's like they want it different every time they perform. So you could be working weeks on end to prep stuff like building sessions or helping build arrangements, and receiving stems, like leveling stuff, mixing, even to like you're about to hit the stage and you're still making edits because it's like the artist wants to do something, and it's like, okay, we're on in what, 5 minutes? Okay, let me finish this edit real quick. You know what I mean? And then transfer it to your backup computer on a hard drive and hope that it loads in time. It's just so many little things. But I've kind of found I've kind of found a way to be fast and diligent, so I can prioritize more time, like just for my well-being. Like taking time to just like take a quick nap or something. It's like, you know what, I'll work. I'm gonna take 15-20 minutes to take a nap, and then I'm just gonna like chug really hard for the next 2-3 hours or whatever, rather than like trying to do it in less time, but I'm more tired. You know what I mean? Because I'm one of those guys that like if I don't have like enough food or I don't have enough rest, like it's gonna be a tough day. Yeah. So I'll like keep snacks on me and things like that, stuff like that. But yeah, life on the road can be tough, and the hardest part for me, which I'm trying to navigate more this year, is just seeing my family more often. I mean, last year, I mean, I had to have done at least 250 dates last year, 300.
Sheesh, man.
And I saw my mom. I'm a big mama's boy, so I saw my mom twice last year.
Wow.
And it's one of those things like, dude, she's getting older. If I kept this going, if I see my mom twice every year for the rest of her life, like let's say she lives another 30 years, I see her 60 more times.
Wow.
It's like, dude,
Yeah.
I have to like you have to prioritize like people in your life, like important people. Like I missed like my cousin's high school graduations. I have one more cousin that's gonna be graduating high school in a few years, so it's like I'm gonna go to that graduation. You know what I mean? So, I've learned, one, to hustle. I think it's good to hustle, but I'm also learning like the road isn't everything. Like when you're gone, life still happens.
Yeah.
When you leave, so I think I just want to figure out how to, um, like even when I'm gone, still try to figure out how to be a part of what's going on back home.
Yeah.
So just maintaining a healthy work and personal life, figuring it however that looks for you. You
Yeah.
know, I think I've kind of figured it out a little bit, but yeah,
Nice,
maybe
man.
maybe it's a bad way to do it. I don't know. Yeah.
Switching back quickly, just on the technical side of things, what is the standard these days, or what is your rig?
That's a good question. I would say right now, it kind of changes depending on the gig. Luckily, we have a few different concoctions of rigs depending on what is needed. But I would say it's normally, there's a company called Direct Out Technologies. They make an interface called the Andiamo, which I really like. It's a 1U unit, that can do 32 channels of analog audio. Can run over Dante. It can do MADI. So like on the road with Sabrina, we were running analog and MADI at the same time. So if the MADI stream went out, we could switch to the analog channels, or whatever, vice versa. So that's like my go-to. I love that unit. That's like my audio converter for tracks, and then normally try to do like redundant, like vocal effects. So I have like two UAD, Apollo X8Ps. Actually, no, in those rigs they're X16. Excuse me. There's no preamps, but it's, we normally will have the option to run vocals through my rig, basically redundantly. So like I have one vocal going to two separate systems. So like if something happens, I can always switch to the other one and it's still gonna go. Which is really cool. And then normally I have a Play Audio 12 in there, which you would think that's actually for tracks, but I'm actually using that. I use that to send MIDI to like a Mio XM. So like for example, if a guitar player has like MIDI patch changes that they want from me, I'll use my Play Audio and send MIDI over Ethernet to their Mio XM box at their rig or whatever, and that's how I'm able to control their patch changes, or to a keyboard player or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. My rig's pretty simple. Yeah, the Andiamo audio interface, two Apollos for redundancy. I've got some switchers that it's kind of complicated that all the XLRs and stuff have to pass through for me to be able to switch easily. But that, and then the Play Audio for some MIDI, and
Couple
that's it.
laptops.
4 laptops, 2 for tracks, 2 for vocal effects, stuff like that. So it looks pretty hefty, but I've kind of managed it. It makes sense in my head. I would like to think it's a pretty decent workflow and really stable. So yeah, obviously I've worked on smaller rigs that are just a Play Audio 12 and that's it. But those things are cool, like especially on budget, budget gigs where it's like we don't really have that many tracks, or like don't really have a huge budget for a big rig, but like the Play Audio 12s you could still run tracks redundantly, through the one interface, which is great. And they sound pretty good. So I've definitely worked on those. But yeah, I would say like if I could have it my way, it's Andiamo, couple Apollos, little Play Audio. Kind of covers all my bases, you know what I mean? So
Now, this is a question just for me since I'm a sound engineer. How many inputs does a Sabrina Carpenter show run?
bro. I'm trying to remember the last time I looked at the input list. It's gonna be like over 100.
And how many of that is just from you, the playback engineer?
Just tracks, 24. And then we were running so there was her vocal plus 2 BGVs that all hit my system as well.
Wow.
And that was all redundantly. So there was a main and spare mic, and then each BGV, so that's 4, double at 8. So 24 channels plus my 8 vocal channels.
It's 32.
32 just from
Playback.
playback. Yeah. So an entire Behringer X32
right.
could handle my
just-
playback rig. Yeah.
It's just next to TJ on side stage.
Yeah. Imagine I have a Behringer X32. That's what I'm running through. Yeah. I mean, you've got drums. I mean, he's got 3 snares, 4 toms, triggers, and I mean, drums alone. That's at least 20 channels of inputs. You know what I mean? And then keys. There's like 4 keyboards, all stereo. Crowd mics. And there's at least 4 to 6 of those. You know what I mean? And then there's all of the like radio inputs, like all of that stuff hits the monitor desk. So like everybody that's on radio, there's separate radio channels, and that's all being controlled like volume wise by the monitor engineer. So that's all hitting the split. It's so many things, dude. That
Wow.
input list is crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it allows for the most freedom. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
easy communication. And it could just it just runs smooth. You know, it's easy to like everybody be on the same page.
Do majority of the top artists still go to sound check? And those that do, what value do you think they see in it? Because we know technology nowadays, you don't necessarily need to go to sound check. And what is your kind of opinion on that, on the artist showing up to sound checks?
Dude, I think depending on the caliber of venues you're working in and like who you're working with and what consoles do they have, you know, I think on the lower levels it's definitely important because though like you're doing club theater shows, like you could show up to sound check and then you show up to the show and like everything got rewired somehow and no one knows how. It's just like everything's wrong. What happened? I would say most top artists these days probably don't like but it's because like at that level it's so dialed in. You're bringing your Digico console everywhere. Like your presets aren't changing. Everything's, you know, snapshotted out. The setup's gonna be the same every day. They've dialed it in to where like the artist ears, like even with the loudest crowds, like they figure out how to like really suppress that stuff, and their ears are just gonna be the same every day. So unless there's like different arrangement changes or like crazy choreo things that need to be worked out that are different, sure, they'll go to sound checks. But I would say like at the top level most of the time, like they'll go to the first maybe 2 or 3 if a tour's starting, and then after that it's just kind of like, and then it's funny, then you'll see like the band stop showing up to sound checks. So then it's just like us crew guys like,
all right, cool.
I guess we'll just go to catering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, but on the lower levels, like the kind of like the club stuff where it's a little more like you're not using your own consoles.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, artists definitely go to sound checks. Or if they don't, they have a lot of trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you kind of have to be lenient. Like if something goes wrong, it's like, well, you didn't go to sound check. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but I would say it's very common if you go to, if you're at a sound check and you don't see the artist, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
But we're there to take care of them. So, you know.
It's a little exclusive for you there. Any more secrets, tips, or tricks? Maybe some tools or tricks that you've learned as a playback engineer to ensure, you know, your job is as successful as it can be.
Do as much prep work before rehearsal as possible. Put in extra hours. Know the songs better than anybody else. Know your stems, you know, because you're going to be in situations where, you know, you show up to rehearsal, you have a clean session, everything's color coded, everything like looks nice, it's nice and labeled, and then you're just like, you might just be thrown some of the hardest edits, and it's like, oh well, I don't really know the song. I just got the stems like last night. I don't really know the song super well, so like I don't know how to do this edit. Like, or it's like they're telling, like, the MD's telling me an edit that maybe doesn't necessarily make sense to me musically because I'm not as proficient as them. So, like, how do I tackle this right now? I don't know what to do. But I would say, like, since you're the person operating in that job, like, do whatever it takes so you are, like, so familiar with what's in front of you. Like, know your songs. Like, for me, I'm lucky enough to be involved, like, in some of the arrangement processes, so I hear the songs a lot. So, like, when I go into rehearsal, like, I know every little detail of, like, if I hear a little flute, I know exactly where it is. I know where it is in my session. So I would say that's just a good tip to have, like, as a playback guy. Like, be super aware and familiar with your stems. Like, just know what's there. And even try to come up with scenarios of like hard edits in your head that it's like, okay, if I needed to do this, like, how would I do it? You know what I mean? And just knowing your DAW. Like, I work in Ableton, so, like, just, like, learn everything about it. Like, learn, like, don't just do the basics. Like, learn what's the best way you can, like, manipulate audio. Like, if you need to transpose stuff, like, should I put it on Complex or Complex Pro? You know what I mean? It's like different warping. It's like, it's just all these little things, like, what's going to make your life easier and make it faster, so you're not the one that's slowing everybody down.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Just being confident and proficient and, like, being familiar with what's in front of you.
What advice could you give to the up-and-coming musician, artist, producer, playback engineer? What some words you'd share with them?
I would say, be okay with not always being right, being rejected. I would say be okay with not always having the answer. But be okay with saying, you know what, I don't have the answer, but I'm going to figure it out. Be okay with, like, maybe your idea not always being taken seriously, or, be okay with, like, just being a playback guy. Like, sometimes, like, for me, I'm so invested, like, in the creative side of things, but sometimes I'm just there to hit play and to do an edit that somebody tells me to do, and that's it, and I just have to be okay with it. But I look at it like, this project, like, whatever I'm working on, this means so much to somebody. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm working on something where I'm not super inspired, I just have to remember, like, this project that I may not even really like or inspire, or I'm not very inspired by, this means so much to somebody. So, like, just, like, go in it with that attitude. Like, this may not be something I'm super into, or, like, I'm not the best at, but this means a lot to somebody. So cool. I'm just going to step up and do what I can to make it the best that it can be. Kind of back what I was saying, like, operating in that place of being instead of just doing all the time. Like, let whatever you're doing just be like an outpouring of, like, who you are. So yeah, I think that's not too cheesy, right?
No, it's really good, man.
Yeah.
Drummer, producer, arranger, playback engineer, TJ Rodriguez, thank you so much for joining us on the Chad and Chong podcast. We hope that you've gained so much knowledge, and just we've had such an amazing time having you on here. Thank you for just being an awesome human being and sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
Let our audience know where they can follow you, Instagram,
Yeah,
TikTok.
you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, TJ Rodriguez Music. I recently just made all of my my social handles the same, so it's not confusing.
Nice.
TJ Rodriguez Music. I've been posting on Instagram, like, a bunch of drums and me yapping about stuff, so go follow that if you're interested in stuff that doesn't matter.
And you're available for remote.
I've been trying to push the, like, remote drum session thing. I have a setup at the house, and that's a big passion of mine. I love just, like, recording drums. So if you have a project or a song and you don't necessarily have, like, the most budget, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. You know what I mean? I'm not here trying to rob anybody. So I love recording drums. So yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys checking out this episode with TJ Rodriguez. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe, like, comment, share this video with your friends if you found it insightful.
We've got more amazing guests coming this season.
Yeah.
So do all those things.
Appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one.